We're headed to the P Patch for capping the card as we go deep on all 11 races at Ellis Park on Saturday.
Today's video is brought to you by Assiniboia Downs Gaming and Event Center. And be sure to tune in to Trust the Profits Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Lights, hosted by Matthew DeSantis.
Salutations and welcome, friends. I'm your host of this episode of Capping the Card. My name is Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @Failed to Menace. Well, make sure to press that subscribe button here on Trust the Profits so you can get all of our great content, whether it's the live streams on Monday and Thursday nights, whether it's handicapping videos, whether it's horse racing news shows. We got something for everyone, and we got more content coming over the summer. We have new people contributing to the channel. Mike Pellerin, Horse Guy Mike, he's starting to do a Belmont Pick 5 video that's out this week, but he's going to be doing Pick 5 videos every single week. So you got Colin on Doubling Down, you got myself capping the card. You can also just split the difference and get a little bit of a Pick 5 ticket there from Mike. He's covering Belmont this week. Make sure to check that out. But we got some more people who are going to be doing content for us over the summer as well. We're really excited. Jessica Tugwell doing a lot of great stuff with Pedigree Puzzle. So like I said, make sure to press that subscribe button. Additionally, like this video and comment below with who is your best bet on the Saturday card, highlighted by, of course, the Grade 1 Stephen Foster, the first Grade 1 ever run at Ellis Park. Who's your top pick throughout the card, not just in the Stephen Foster? We'll get to that. And I know what everybody's going to be saying in that race, or I have a sense of it based upon some reaction I've seen on social media. But like I said, make sure to let me know who you like on Saturday. Who's your best bet? Well, if this is your first time joining Capping the Card, the premise is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go race 1 through 11. I'm going to give you my top pick and my top value play for every single race. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind as we talk about Ellis Park and Capping the Card. From a capping the card perspective, when I give you a value play, I always try to make this clear. Sometimes these are horses that I would strongly consider a win bet for. Certainly horses that I would include horizontally in some instances. Other times, these are horses that I would strictly use vertically. I don't think they're a particularly strong win threat, but I think they could enrich an exacta, a trifecta, and to use them underneath. So I always try to shout that out when they fit different scenarios. But like I said, my top pick is who I think is going to win. But my value play a lot of times is a horse that I'm very high on and I think could win the race given the right break and the right situations, and you're going to get a little bit more of a price. But sometimes, like I said, they just strictly are underneath plays. But I always try to call that out when we talk through the races. Now, as it relates to Ellis Park, speed kills. That is the MO of how Ellis Park has been playing this meet, particularly on the dirt. You want to be forward, and speed has been dynamite. So handicap with that in mind. We've seen a lot of gate to wire winners at Ellis Park. And when I go through and talk about a lot of these races, the recurring theme you're going to hear is talking about speed, talking about where this horse is going to be placed early. I'm playing against a lot of dead closers, particularly on the dirt. The turf has been playing a little bit more fair, so I think you can obviously get your turf closers there. But on the dirt, being a closer is really not where you want to be. You want to be up on the front end in a lot of these races. So keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, the weather. They had awful weather on Thursday, tons of rain, off turf. It was just an absolute mess there in Henderson, Kentucky. But it's supposed to be nice on Friday. However, 60% chance of thunderstorms on Saturday. So it's possible we get more rain there on Saturday. Kentucky always has crazy weather this time of year. Kentucky has crazy weather a lot of times a year. People who live there know that. So listen, when you're handicapping and when you're playing the races, keep that stuff in mind. I will say, excuse me, the track was playing even more speed favoring after it was raining and in the slop on Thursday. So if you're going to play it again on Saturday and it's raining again on Saturday and it's sloppy conditions and there's a lot of moisture, again, speed favoring surface on the dirt, make sure to play that angle. All right. Well, let's dive into the first race on the card, and we'll kick things off the way I love to kick things off, and that's with a good $50,000 maiden claimer going 5.5 furlongs for 2-year-old fillies. You don't see this very often, and yeah, this early in the season, but we got a maiden claimer for the 2-year-old fillies, and this is a really tough one in terms of my choice between my top pick, my top value play. And this really came down to the speed bias. I'll be honest. But I think this is a instance where my value play, I would absolutely encourage you to think about placing a win bet on the horse. Because I think at 5-1, What a World is a really intriguing bet to place in this particular race. That said, I want to talk about Sapphire Knights, the favorite in this race. Listen, the horse just ran June 17th. And Asmussen is wheeling this horse back on relatively short rest. Interestingly enough, he doesn't do it a lot, although, with somebody like Steve Asmussen, there's plenty of cases to look at. He has actually winning at a 29% rate, wheeling a horse back on 7 to 14 days rest. So this is actually a pretty winning move for Asmussen. Now, the concern that I have with Sapphire Knights is that she ran at this level last time and just couldn't get the job done. And that was on the Ellis Park surface. And she went off as the overwhelming favorite that day. So that's a problem. Now we're going 5.5 furlongs rather than just 5 furlongs. That said, there's really no other speed in this race. And I think that's something to keep in mind. She was never really able to shake free last time out. I think she could get a very easy lead in this particular race because of the horses that have been raced, there's really no clear speed threat other than the 5. And I'm going to get to What a World in a second. And honestly, none of the first-time starters are particularly strong in that regard either. So I think Sapphire Knights could just get out there on the front end and just run her race and run well. I mean, she finished fourth by only 3 lengths in a $117,000 stakes race at Churchill back in May. So it's not as if she was throwing in these awful efforts and before the drop down to maiden claimer. But like I said, I think she's worth a shot here. You get Louis Size aboard. I think she's probably your most likely winner in this race. I think she makes a lot of sense, but I could also understand going, listen, she burned me last time as chalk at this same level. Why am I going to go back to use her again? Well, if you're not, then what I would suggest is looking at the number 5, What a World. You're getting more value here at 5-1 on this horse. And this is a horse that's taking the class drop. He is going from maiden special weight down to maiden claimer. Now, that said, the purse money is actually going up. This horse actually ran for a maiden special weight 34,000 at Horseshoe Indianapolis last time out. Finished second in that race, mind you, by about 5.5 lengths. This horse does have good early speed, maybe not the same as Sapphire Knights, but what sets this horse apart a little bit is this Michael Evans, the second horse with Luan Machado aboard, has decent late run, a little bit better sustainability. Now, speed figures and time form figures on young horses is always a little hit or miss. But what I'll say is Sapphire Knight's late speed figure is a very pedestrian and very poor 14, whereas What a World's is 41 actually. So, you'd expect if anybody's going to make a run, it's going to be the 5. So that's where I would be going in this race. I kind of have these as 1A and 1B in this particular race, but that's how I see race 1 playing out at Ellis Park on Saturday. Well, let's head to race number 2, which is a maiden special weight going 7 furlongs for $120,000. And this one is a really interesting race. There's a really fun pedigree play in my value play that I'll talk about for Ken McPeak, but we'll start with the favorite. And, this is a tough spot. Pumpkin Spagone is a horse I didn't necessarily run to right away. I really wanted to like the number 1 horse, Fancy, for Brendan Walsh, and that barn has been heating up at Ellis Park and at Churchill. And I always tell people, pay attention when Brendan Walsh's barn is hot because it gets really hot. I like that horse. I just worry about Fancy, the number 1 horse, on the inside rail, going 7 furlongs, getting a little bit of a cutback. I wouldn't be shocked if that horse won at 7-2 and certainly provides you maybe a little bit better value than the number 3. So if you wanted to go in that direction, I wouldn't talk you off of that horse. Like I said, just a little concerned that the horse maybe doesn't have the greatest gate speed and might just have some trouble from that inside rail. I took a look at the number 6, Absinthe, for Steve Asmussen. This is a horse that ran against the favorite Pumpkin Scone last time out and lost ground late. That was kind of a weirdly run race where they kind of made a little bit of a middle move and then flattened out and ended up drifting back. Yeah, I took a look at the number 7, Happy Am I, for Dallas Stewart. But again, that horse tends to fade back pretty severely, although has been improving slightly, from the first to second time out. So that's one at a bigger price that was a little interesting to me. But like I said, ultimately, Pumpkin Scone was the pick. And this is a horse that, again, made a winning move, and then just got passed by Motown Mayhem late. Has responded very nice on the work tab, firing off a 59-1 5 furlong bullet on June 24th. So this horse is feeling very good. This horse should sit right behind. And see, this is what I actually like. There's a lot of speed in this race with the 6 and the 7 in particular. Those two are going to go at it up front. And I think that the 3 is going to be in a perfect spot to sit right off of that. Right behind it, could sit in a pocket trip or just hold that inside rail and float the others wide. But I think the 3 sits the right sort of trip and has better late pace speed figures than either of the other 2 speed horses are early on. Again, speed is going to be important. I'm looking at horses that are going to be coming from up front early. So that's what led me to Pumpkin Scone. Now, from a value standpoint, I really do like this number 4, Mo Blooms. This is a horse whose dam, Cat's Garden, get this, she's had 5 offspring who have raced. They have never missed the board on debut. I don't know if she's good enough to win this race, but she's certainly good enough from a pedigree standpoint to finish in the top 3. And you'd be foolish, I think, not to include this horse in your vertical exotics. Like I said, Cat's Garden, 5 offsprings, 5 for 5 hitting the board, 2 wins, 2 seconds, and a third. It's fascinating. I mean, Ken McPeak is not known for getting him ready first time out, but the horse had a nice gate work on June 21st at Churchill, 49-1 gate work. I always like to see that from horses making those debuts, having that sort of last gate work before the big race. Listen, I think the horse should show a little bit of speed. There's some nice 48 flat works in this horse's background. At 12-1 on the board, you're getting, or morning line, you're getting a really nice value, I think. This is a horse I'm absolutely including underneath at the very least. So definitely like Mo Blooms from a pedigree play, and then maybe just from the way the standpoint of how this race will play out. Well, let's move to race number 3, which is the first of several stakes races on the card. And we're going to go to the American Derby here. And while it looks like I'm picking a short price, I'm actually picking the second choice on the board because your morning line favorite is actually Wadsworth at 9-5. I'm going to be playing against Wadsworth in this spot. I think that's a good horse, but was beaten by Gigante, who's in this race. And that horse is 4-1 on the board last time out. But I'm going to go with Moustache, and I'm going to explain why. This is a horse that I keep an eye on, and I keep eye on a lot of horses like this, and there's 2 of them later on in the card we're going to talk about in a really big spot. But these are horses that overcome trainer angles, and that's something that I always make note of, that when a horse overcomes a trainer angle, I go, this horse might be really good. Now, Victoria Oliver, very good trainer, but here's the reality. She was 0 for 19 in graded stakes races with horses going off Lasix before Moustache won that Transylvania. She had not had a lot of graded stakes success. She had not had any success switching horses off Lasix in a big spot. And what does Moustache do? Moustache goes out and wires the field at the grade 3 Transylvania. That's one of those moments where you record that and you go, okay, that's good to remember this horse. Listen, last time out, stepped up to the American turf at Churchill and ran a big race, finishing 4th, but really, listen, Webslinger, Farbridge, Major Dude. Who did she beat 2 back? Or who did he beat 2 back, I should say? Nagarok and Webslinger. Those are both next out winners. Webslinger goes on to win another race after that American turf. Major Dude goes on to win a race after that as well. This is a horse that's been through the ringer already in 7 career efforts. It's got the speed, has had a lot of success now off of Lasix, which this race is off of Lasix. I just think this horse wires the field. I think they finally figured out what this horse does well, and this horse has really good gate speed the last couple of times out. Here's the other thing. This horse ran really well with a little bit of cut in the ground, ran well over that good Keeneland turf. So a little bit of moisture, I don't think is going to concern this horse at all. This horse is working lights out leading up to this race. I like Mustache at 2-1 as my top pick. Now, from a value play standpoint, I'm going to go to the number 3 Desert Duke for Chris Hartman with Mitchell Merle aboard. If you're a little concerned about Gigante, the number 4, maybe wearing out Mustache up front, then I think Desert Duke makes some sense because Desert Duke will probably sit right behind those two in all likelihood. Probably doesn't have the speed to really contend with those two, so should sit behind. This horse has come from off the pace before. And this is obviously a big spot, but ran third last time out in the Audubon behind Webslinger and Mendelssohn's March. Was in that American turf, was well beaten that day. But again, that was a grade 2. This is a listed stakes race. I think this is this horse's right level. This horse is 5 for 7 hitting the board in its lifetime. Really, the only 2 poor efforts this horse has ever turned in were debut effort on the dirt and a grade 2. I think you can easily toss both of those. Every other effort has been super honest. This horse's speed figures would need to take a little bit of a step forward, no doubt about it. But Chris Hartman's been an interesting trainer in that he's only 1 for 14 at Ellis Park, but 8 for 14 in the money. Desert Duke's a horse I would use underneath. I don't view this horse as a particularly strong win threat, but one that I would absolutely use in your vertical exotics. Well, let's move to race number 4 on the card, and we're going to get to another maiden special weight race. And this is where I think you can start to get, I think there's some very strong favorites early in the card. I think there are some very strong favorites late in the card. I think in the middle of the card is where you can get a lot of value. So race number 4 is a maiden special weight going 6 furlongs for 2-year-olds. And I just have a hard time ever choosing favorites in 2-year-old races. Ken McPeak has the favorite in this one, the number 3 Top of the Street at 3-1. The horse makes sense. The horse has improved. McPeak, third time out, actually, with 2 years was quite good. He usually is a trainer who lets them run into shape. Here's the problem. Ken McPeak's 0 for 10 right now, winning at Ellis Park. So that's something to be concerned about potentially, not just for this race, but he's got a couple of big horses later on that could be a problem for. I ultimately went to the far outside Normandy Hero at 5-1 on the morning line for my top pick for Rudy Brissett. This horse reminds me a little bit of a horse like Federal Judge, who's been very, very good for Rudy. And this horse has a lot of speed. And he's sired by Omaha Beach, who's a new sire. And Omaha Beach has been off to a very hot start. He's only had 5 of his offspring run, but 3 of them have won. So that's not bad when you're winning at a 60% rate as a new sire. There's a ton of speed here. 47-4, 4 furlong work last time out. You go 2 back to that June 1st work, a 1:03 bullet at Keeneland. 48 flat bullet gate work on June 8th. This horse has a lot of speed. You get Flavian Pratt aboard. I think this is a horse that might have a really good race. And Rudy's good with first time out and 2-year-olds. I mean, this is kind of where he's quite talented is, he wins 26% of the time overall in 2023, but he's got a lot of success over the last 5 years with 2-year-old races and with maiden special weight races and horses with their first start. Positive ROI returns in all of those categories. And he's returning a positive ROI every time he teams up with Flavian Pratt. So that's kind of where I'm going with my top pick. Now, from a value play standpoint, again, with these maiden races, I'll always go to a pedigree play for a value play, and I go to Uno Mas Bourbon, which might not be a bad life philosophy for me as well. I always like my bourbon. And one more, never a bad idea. As long as you're not driving, it's always a good idea to have one more bourbon. This is for Ian Wilkes with Mitchell Merle aboard. Again, much like the pedigree play I had in race 2, the dam is outstanding here. Camellie. Camellie is a Harlan's Holiday mare, and 2 for 5 winning for her offspring in debut, 4 for 5 in the exacta. So again, 2 winners from 5 offsprings, 4 of the 5 finished in the exacta. Very strong pedigree play here. The 5 furlong works are very solid. You get a 1:02, 5 furlong work on June 23rd. You get a 1:01.3 bullet gate or breeze gate work back on June 9th. This horse has some speed. 12-1 on the morning line. I think you're getting a really good deal on this horse. I think this one could jump up and surprise. In a race that I think a lot of people are going to spread in, I would absolutely be including the 7 in one of my, horizontal pick sequences. Let's move to race number 5 on the card. And like I said, I think this is the part where you can start getting some value. And so this is an $80,000 optional claimer going a mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares. And I'm going to go to the outside for a couple of big prices in this race. And one of the things I should say is there is a lot of speed in this race. So that was a big factor and consideration for why I ultimately ended up on the number 11, She's Gone, in this race. So this is one where, the Victoria Oliver horse, we talked about Victoria earlier, Martin Garcia aboard. There's so much speed in this race. The 1 horse, the 5 horse, the 10 horse, the 12 horse, all of these horses are going to want to go. And I got news for you. They're not all going to be able to go. And if they do, they're going to burn each other up. So I think the pace is going to be really fast. She's Gone has got by far and away the best late pace speed figures in the field. I think if you look the last couple of times at Churchill, the last time out, she was too close to the lead, I think. And she was too close to that pace. I think you look 2 back. She made a nice run and just came up a little bit short against a decent enough field. And that was off the bench at Keeneland over a good turf, going a mile and an eighth. She's running some nice, she's running a grade 2. She's running a grade 3. She's got Lasix, which I think helps. I just think this is one who's kind of due for this spot. She's run up against much tougher competition than this field has to offer. I mean, she's running the QE2 Cup against Gina Romantica. She's run against Bubble Rock. She's run against Scottish Star and market segmentation. And surprisingly, she's run against McCulloch. She's run against big time horses. And I feel like this is just the right combination of pace for her to run into. So she's going to be my top pick here. And I'm really going to go with kind of same song, second verse as my value play, Under One Sky, another closer breaking from the number 9 hole. I should mention that's the biggest concern with She's Gone is that 11 post. How does she get over? Does she just let everybody go basically and make a left-hand turn and just try to save ground and come from the clouds? Does she try to kind of move up tactically and sit mid-pack? We'll see. I think that's the one concern is does she get hooked wide perhaps? Under One Sky, similar dynamic, but a couple of spots in, obviously, on the inside. This is a horse that can absolutely do the distance, ran a mile and a half last time out. So this is a cutback. And I think it's the same logic as She's Gone. I think you can toss, like I said, the last effort was good, but it was a 4th place or 5th place effort in a stakes race, actually going a mile and a half at Churchill against Miss Yearwood and Sparkle Blue. I mean, again, some nice horses that she's run up against here. This is a horse that might be better on synthetic, but I think if you look those last 2 times out before the last race, going a mile and a 16th, there were a couple of 4th place finishes. I think she's going to get more pace to run into. I think she's just going to have a better setup in general than she'd had those last 2 times out. So I'm going to use her underneath, strictly an underneath play at 10-1, but I think she's one who's going to come running late. She's had nice work. She doesn't work very regularly, which may be a slight concern. She's only worked on June 9th, but if you go back and look, she doesn't work super regularly either. She races a lot. And so Juan Cano, who's had a little bit of success here at the Ellis Park meet with 3 wins and 13 efforts with Gerardo Corrales aboard. I'm going to use this one underneath. I think there's something interesting here. Unified, or I should say a filly out of Unified up top, and then some Japanese Australian breeding underneath. So I like this horse quite a bit in race number 5. Let's move to race number 6, which is another stakes race. And again, I think this is where we're going to be able to fade some favorites and find some value. We're going to the Kelly's Landing Stakes. We're going 6.5 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up. And there's 2 overwhelming favorites in this race. One of them is Bango, and the other is Tejano Twist. Now, I already talked to you about the way the track is playing at Ellis Park. Tejano Twist is an automatic toss for me. This, particularly in sprints, we have just not seen deep closers close. And Tejano Twist has not been getting there lately at the end. And so I don't see Tejano Twist as a horse that I want to use in this spot excuse me, particularly at a short price. Now, Bango is running out of his mind lately in this kind of listed stakes level races. Last two times out, recorded triple digit speed figures, ran a huge race against Gunite last time out, finishing second. And here's my concern with Bango. I think there's a bounce coming. This horse, I mean, if this horse continues to progress, this horse is going to run like a 110 Beyer speed figure. And I just don't see that happening. I think you're going to see a regression from this horse. And as a result, and also we should mention trainer Greg Foley, 0 for 12 right now at Ellis Park this meet. So that's a little bit of a concern. And again, at a short price. The number 3 Miles Ahead makes some sense. I could see an argument for this horse. This horse is very solid. And again, has never really turned in bad efforts. Has been very consistent the last few times out, but you have to go back to last year at Churchill to see the last time the horse won. Happy Jack is in this race, and I actually contemplated picking Happy Jack because I think this horse is actually quite good at this level and maybe sprinting. I think this horse might have a future in this regard. I just am afraid that he's going to be running against the track as much as he's going to be running against competition. It's the same issue I have with Town and Twist. Ultimately, I ended up with Marsalis. And Marsalis is a horse, and because I don't think it's pronounced Marseille. I don't think it's pronounced French. I think it's pronounced Marsalis. But anyway, Marsalis is a horse that is 5 for 5 in the exact with 3 wins. Now, this horse is coming off the bench. That is the concern. But here's the thing. Horses coming from off the bench, what do they usually do? They usually feel super fresh and they want to run fast. And that's what this horse does anyway. And I have a feeling this was a horse that could just steal it on the front end. This horse already had great speed, has one going longer at 7 furlongs, and was running against a closing favoring track that last time out at Churchill Downs in November. This horse has gone off as the favorite in every single one of his races. And like I said, never finished out of the exacta and has 3 wins. You get Joel Rosario aboard. It gives me a little bit of confidence that the Rosario's been aboard this horse twice before, and he's gone to the lead both times. So he doesn't screw around on this horse. He knows this horse has speed and can go. This is absolutely a little bit of a swing by me to try to get around the favorites, but I'm going to go with a 6-1 shot up top as my top play in this race. Now, from a value standpoint, I really like the number 1 horse, Fortin Hill, and I don't understand how this horse is 12-1. Yes, this horse was in well over his head last time out in a grade 1, finished last by 13 lengths. And yes, the concern with Fortin Hill is that this horse runs better on Lasix. The last 2 wins both came on Lasix. This race is coming off of Lasix. That said, this horse has decent efforts off of Lasix. It's not as if this horse just goes in the tank when he's off Lasix. I mean, this horse, ran in the Sir Shackleton, finished 3rd to Weyburn and Collaborate last year off of Lasix, and ran a 96 Beyer speed figure. So this horse is capable of running a big effort off of Lasix. He doesn't need that, I think, to run well. And even finished 3rd in a big time allowance race, 3 back against Nakatomi and Endorsed. So I think this horse, again, maybe more of an underneath play, but this is a horse that should be pretty forwardly placed, breaking from the inside rail. I imagine you're going to go. That's going to be the MO for Gerardo Corrales, is to get this horse out of the gate and get this horse out and be forwardly positioned pretty early. And this horse doesn't fall apart late in terms of, this horse has a decent late pace speed figures. I just think it was a little over his head last time out on that Kentucky Derby Day card in the Churchill Downs Stakes. And I think, listen, this is a much easier spot for this horse. Again, this is me playing against the 2 favorites. I think Bango is going to bounce, and I think Tejano Twist is running up against the track. If you want to go to Miles Ahead, the number 3 is the alternative. I get it. I'm going to take a little bit of a swing with these 2 at a price in the Kelly's Landing. Well, let's go to the number 7 race on the card, which is a 7 furlong race. And it's $80,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up. And ladies and gentlemen, the Chalk Fest is back. Because while I said we could get some prices early, we now get to the point of the card where favorites start to look pretty tough to get around. And this might be the toughest favorite to get around. And this is Hoist the Gold, the top pick for me at the number 6 horse at even money odds for Dallas Stewart and Louis Saez. Hoist the Gold's taking a massive class drop. This actually makes a ton of sense, I think, that Hoist the Gold has been running against big time horses. Taba, Pioneer Medina, Mr. Wireless, Hear My Song, Cody's Wish, Zandon, Tejano Twist, White Abario, Gunite, Elite Power. This horse has been running against the absolute best in the sprint division for the last year and has been extremely honest that whole time and has hit the board consistently that whole time. Now, here's the problem with Hoist the Gold. 2 wins in 20 career efforts. Now, listen, he's also 11 for 20 hitting the board. He's been running against, like I said, top level competition, now taking a pretty big class drop. And I think this is just a spot. And I think maybe with Dallas Stewart's logic here is let's get this horse a win before we maybe step this horse back up into a big time spot and a big time race. So I like the logic here that Stewart's using. And I think, the cutback from a mile last time out to 7 furlongs. I think this horse, is 5 for 5 hitting the board at 7 furlongs. So I think there's something to like there. I just think Hoist the Gold, too, from a speed figure standpoint, if this horse runs back to even how this horse ran in the Commonwealth Stakes back at Keeneland, it wins. If you want to go to, Braun and Brow on the far outside, or not the far outside, but the number 11 post as the alternative, I get it. I don't know if that horse wants 7 furlongs. That horse has done really well at 6 furlongs and at 5 and 5.5. Whether this horse wants 6, I don't know. The horse likes to win a little bit more, 5 for 13 winning, but has largely been running against this level and running in a lot of state restricted stakes races down in Louisiana. So, it's also one of those where you just question the caliber of competition that Braun and Brow has been running against. Last time out, finished third too. He's my Honey Badger and Happy Jack. So, like I said, I'm going to go with Hoist the Gold here as my top pick. From a value play standpoint, this was a tough race for me to find value. I'll be honest, because I think that if you try to get past Hoist the Gold, I do think Braun and Brow. I think the next logical choice is Braun and Brow, even though I don't like that horse that much. And then after that, there's not a ton that I love in this race. I ultimately ended up on the number 7 Trafalgar for Chris Hartman, who I mentioned earlier is having a good meet, just not breaking through with a lot of wins. Again, 8 for 14 in the money with only 1 victory. Mitchell Morrill aboard. This is a horse that is making a cutback. It ran a mile and an eighth, mile and a 16th, mile and a 16th, has been routing, is now going back to 7 furlongs. Ran once at 7 furlongs, actually in debut in a $100,000 maiden special weight at Saratoga against Classic Causeway and Brigadier General. So, has run against some nice competition. And this horse then goes next time out at Churchill and breaks its maiden doing a 1-turn mile. I think that's important to point out, going 1 turn. Then immediately this horse goes on the Derby Trail, basically goes to the Lecomte, goes to the Risen Star, doesn't qualify, then goes to the Pat Day Mile, then the Matt Win, and then goes from the Albert Stall Barn and gets claimed and goes to Chris Hartman. Chris Hartman's kind of was stepping this horse up in class, but was doing it going 2 turns. I like the idea of cutting this horse back. Now, the concern is the horse is going to be running up against the track because he's a little bit more of a closer. So that is a concern for sure. Although I would say that the start 4 back, actually, he showed decent gate speed getting out and was, sitting 3rd and 4th early on. So this horse can sit a decent enough trip. But I think, again, in a sprint is probably going to be coming from a little further back. That might be an issue. But again, from a class standpoint, I think he makes a lot of sense. The other horse that I just want to give a shout to is the Queen's Jewels, the number 3 for Thomas Vandenberg. With Florent Drew aboard, this horse is interesting. 4 for 4 in the money with 2 wins at the distance, but you got to go all the way back to 2021 to find those races. 15 for 25 in the money on dirt. This horse has raced 62 times in his career. Getting back on the dirt, actually won a restricted stakes race at Churchill 4 back with Flo aboard. This horse has really good speed. I would not be shocked if this horse held on for a piece at 20-1. So the Queen's Jewels, think about using that one as well. I wanted to give that one out, even though it's not my official value play in this race. Well, let's head to race number 8, which is the first of the 3 consecutive graded stakes races. And this is the grade 2 Fleur de Lee. And we're going a mile and an eighth for 4-year-olds and up. And this is one where, again, there is very, very little. And this is what's so interesting to me. There's very little speed in this race. There's almost none. Hardy Constitution is the only speed in this race. And Hardy Constitution, I got news for you, is not good enough to wire this field, I don't think. So as a result, you start looking at other alternatives. And I think the one makes some sense. We're going to talk about the one in a little bit. Ultimately, though, I ended up on the favorite, Amore, at 8-5 for Brad Cox. This horse has good early speed. And I think that's all you're going to need in this race. Because I think in the La Troyenne, this horse just got off to a terrible start and was way far back and was wide and it just was not a good day for Amore that day, and still managed to finish fourth, by the way, which was not a bad effort in a grade one. You go back and look at what this horse was doing before that, and that was super impressive. I mean, winning that Beholder Mile, winning the Bayakoa, and then winning a listed stakes race before that at the fairgrounds and doing it at 4 different tracks, Fairgrounds, Oaklawn, Santa Anita. This horse was traveling everywhere and beating everybody. I thought that was, quite telling. So this horse can sit close. And I think that's the key, that she can sit close. And then even though there's not a lot of speed, she doesn't need to close into anything. She's been working beautifully for Brad Cox, as you would imagine. Cox has not had a overwhelming Ellis Park meet, but I think he's going to have a big day today because I think there's some horses we're going to keep talking about here in a little bit that I really like in different spots. So Amore is going to be my top pick at 8-5. I just think the race sets up nicely for her. Now, if you're looking for an alternative who might sit a very similar trip, I would go to the inside Bellamora at 5-1 for Simon Callahan. This is a really interesting horse who, I don't know what happened, but this horse seemed to the light bulb just seemed to go on for this horse suddenly at Golden Gate on the turf, even though the horse crossed the finish line first, was disqualified. But ever since that race, this horse has just run progressively better and better races, both on the turf, on the synthetic, and on the dirt. And so it's really fascinating because it's not like there was a trainer change. It's not like there was a huge layoff. It was, this horse was in Chad Brown's barn initially, but Callahan got this horse for a while. And then all of a sudden, it's like he kind of figured out maybe how this horse needed to be trained or campaigned or something. But this horse ran second in a grade 3 on the dirt at Churchill last year, and then came back and ran a really game second at the Santa Maria at Santa Anita 2 back against Adair Manor, who, oh, by the way, is just winning everything out there on the West Coast. Then comes back and runs on the turf against Macadamia and Quattro L and Queen Goddess, and nice group. Now is back on the dirt. I kind of like this horse. Shipping in from the West Coast, I don't usually love, but again, on the dirt, I don't mind it as much, and should sit a very similar trip to Amore in terms of having good speed, especially breaking from the inside rail, should be able to get out there and go. And listen, I think the horse makes some sense. So at 5-1, you're getting a little bit more value. If you want to try to play against the favorite, I think the one makes some sense. I know a lot of people are going to look at Pauline's Pearl. I just think she might be I don't know if she's plateaued or if she's just, I think her 4-year-old year was her best year. And I think she's kind of a little bit, I don't want to say on the downside of things, but it does feel like she's maybe doesn't have the same speed, the same kick that she had before. Also, it's interesting when you go back and actually look at her wins. Yes, you can never take away last year's La Troyenne from her, that grade 1 victory, huge. But you look at her other wins, grade 3 Houston Ladies Classic, twice, Zia Park Oaks, the Fantasy, going all the way back to 2021, a maiden special weight race, and then the Charlestown Oaks, in which she crossed the finish line second by 3 lengths, but was only given first place and rewarded first place purse money after our Adios Jersey, who won that race, tested positive for, I forget what the substance was, but popped basically as a positive. So, her victories haven't been overwhelming necessarily, with the exception of the La Troyenne last year, which was absolutely incredible over She Dares the Devil. But I think she's just a little bit on the downside, so I'm going to move past her in this race. Well, let's move to race number 9, and this is the Wise Dan. And grade 2, going a mile and 16th. But by the way, shout out to Wise Dan. What an awesome horse that horse was. But going a mile and 16th on the turf for 4-year-olds and up. And again, the chalk zone continues here. And this is what I mean about, I think Brad Cox is going to have a very good day. Because I think that this race sets up really nicely for set piece. There's a lot of speed in this race. And that's all you really need to say, because if there's a lot of speed in this race, I know who's going to come flying late, and that's Set Piece, who has by far and away the best late pace speed figures in the field. 123 time form rating, late pace, which is incredible. Most horses that are good closers have a 100, a 110, a 115. Set Piece 123. And it's not as if this horse is a nothing on the front end. He's got enough speed that he can make sure that he sits like he did last time, 3-5 lengths from the pace. Now, that was a smaller field, obviously. Now we got a 10 horse field, but like I said, there's a lot of speed in here. The 10 is going to want to go, the 9 is going to want to go. Then you also have to look at the 5. Play Action Pass is going to want to go. Get Smoking is going to want to go. I wouldn't even be surprised if the 3 Camp Hope is a little bit more forward. The 2 Tut's Revenge is going to be forward. A lot of horses are going to be forward here. So I think that it is a race that sets up really nicely for Set Piece to come running late. And, third back on the form cycle, you saw that nice speed figure progression last time out for Brad Cox. I think this one, goes there. Listen, it's a super short price. I get if people want to play against. It's probably you have to play a single here, or you're going to play against. If you're going to play against, I think you can kind of spread a little bit. But the horse that I'm looking for from a value standpoint, it's actually on the inside rail in Harlan Estate. This is a horse that finished third to Set Piece last time out. And this is a good turf horse who doesn't get a chance to run on the turf all that much. Runs on the synthetic, actually, a lot more than it runs on the turf. I think you can toss the 1.5 mile race 4 back in which he was walked off. You look at all the other races, this horse fits from a speed figure standpoint. 94, 94, 94, 91, the last 4 times on the turf. Those are good figures, and those are good enough figures to compete with just about anybody in this field. I mean, even Set Piece last time I was a 98, but before that was a 92. So Harlan Estate is right there for trainer Whit Beckworth. You get Deke Glencannon aboard. This horse does have, I think, some one of the reasons I like this horse a little bit more is this horse doesn't have any Lasix questions. And that's a question that I have in particular around Camp Hope, who I think runs a lot better on Lasix than he runs off of Lasix. That was a concern about why I wanted to play there. And he's a little bit more proven than the number 6 horse, who I also kind of like in Kitten Set at 12-1 for Paolo Lobo. That's a horse that's interesting to me, is taking a huge step up in class. I always like to play those types of horses. And he's got some big speed figures on the turf. He likes Ellis Park well enough. He finished 4th in a stakes race here and recorded a 94 speed figure. That is Kinnan Set. But I don't know if I can use that horse in this spot. So like I said, a little bit more proven. There's no questions about Lasix here with Harlan Estate. You've seen him run against this level of competition. And here's the other thing. Breaking from the inside rail should have ground-saving trip, but has enough tactical speed not to get shuffled back. And so I think this horse should sit a decent enough trip from that inside rail. Will probably sit mid-pack and will have a little bit of a pocket trip. I think we'll be able to angle out coming for home and has a decent late kick as well. So a 10-1 on the morning line, I think you're getting really good price there for the Wise Dan Stakes there for Harlan Estate. All right, well, let's move to the grade 1, Stephen Foster. And we're going 1 mile and an 1/8 for 4-year-olds and up. This is the top of the handicap division, or at least a good chunk of it. Obviously, if you looked at the morning line of this race, you can tell how close this race is. There's a lot of contention in this race. Between Smile Happy, West Willpower, Proxy, Last Samurai, Rattle and Roll, Stiletto Boy. I mean, all these horses are basically that I just listed are between 3-1 and 6-1. So you're not going to get a huge price. And I think this is a race, and I couldn't completely understand it, especially for vertical players. Horizontally, you're going to have to pick your poison and figure out what you want to do in this race. And if I could totally, this feels a little bit more like a spread race, because I think there are some others where, if you want to single a horse like Set Piece or single some other favorites earlier on, you might be able to spread here a little bit. And this was certainly a very spready race for me, I think, horizontally. But if you're playing vertically, this might be one where you just sit there and see how the board shakes out until, a couple of minutes to post. And you look at the will pays and you look at the, projected pools and things like that. Because it'll be interesting to see who actually goes off as the favorite in this race. I have a feeling it's going to be Smile Happy, who is the morning line favorite, but I'm not entirely sold on that. I mentioned Ken McPeak earlier, and McPeak is a trainer who historically has really struggled taking horses off Lasix in graded stakes races, was 1 for 26 at one point this year in those same spots. What I will say about both Smile Happy and Rattle and Roll is that they've overcome that angle. They won going off Lasix in graded stakes races for Ken McPeak. Those types of horses always are interesting to me. It goes back to what I said about Mustache earlier on. There's another horse that fits this description, Red Carpet Ready for Rusty Arnold. You go back and look at Red Carpet Ready. Rusty Arnold was 0 for 42 bringing horses back from a layoff until Red Carpet Ready. Was 1 for 63 second back from the layoff until Red Carpet Ready. I like looking at horses like that who basically are like, listen, I don't care what the trainer stats are. I'm winning this damn race. And Smile Happy and Rattle and Roll have both done that. Now, McPeak is still not particularly strong. And I have to credit Sarah El Badwi with finding this statistic. I think it's actually 2 for 36, if I'm not mistaken. Might be 2 for 35 or 2 for 36. With horses that won last time out stepping up to a grade 1. There's just a lot of numbers that are not in Ken McPeak's favor here when it comes to Smile Happy and Rattle and Roll. The other thing to consider is when you look at Smile Happy, this is a horse that is a little of an on-off horse. And, ran a 110 buyer last time out. Huge effort. And will this horse be able to replicate that effort from May 5th? I don't know. And, but before that ran a 91 in the Oaklawn Mile. Before that ran a 101. So it's a little bit on off. I think you could make an argument that, listen, that with the Oaklawn Mile wasn't long enough for Smile Happy. He wanted more distance. And I'm not going to argue with you, although Run Happy up top and, it's interesting pedigree to have because there's some sprinter pedigree in there, obviously, with Run Happy. But it is, but McPeak's also 0 for 10 at Ellis Park so far. You get Corey Lannery aboard. Who's ridden the horse before and had ridden the horse to a victory in that Kentucky Jockey Club going back to November of 2021. And listen, Smile Happy has enough tactical speed to sit close, but he doesn't have the same sort of tactical speed that Stiletto Boy has, that Speed Bias has, or that West Willpower have. Those are going to be your front three. And then it's a matter of, can Smile Happy close on a track that's not really closing all that much? Rattle and Roll, same sort of thing. Rattle and Roll is, I think, even more up against it here. This is a horse, yes, I know he won a grade 1 going back to the Breeders' Futurity. But outside of that race, this is a horse that is largely a grade 2, grade 3 type of a horse. And by the way, I would love to own a grade 3 horse. This horse has won 3 consecutive races, the Ben Ali, the Pimlico Special, the Blame. He's run against nice horses, but when he ran against West Willpower, Art Collector, Mr. Wireless, guess what? He didn't close on those guys at all. And that was with Lasix, and he finished 4th that day by 6.5 lengths. Now, that was off the bench. You could make an argument. No, I was off the bench. But again, when Rattle and Roll runs against the best, usually comes up a little bit short. So at 4-1, I don't really want to use that horse. Speed Bias is interesting at 12-1 for Ron Moquette. Horse ran a hell of a race last time out against Rattle and Roll in that Pimlico Special, but is taking a big step up in class. Did run decent second to Smile Happy 3-back over a sloppy sealed track. So again, maybe if there's a little bit of moisture, maybe this is a horse to consider. It's been training lights out. There's no doubt about it. This horse has speed. I think Stiletto Boy is still faster ultimately, although Kent DeSormo, we'll see what he ends up doing. But ultimately, my pick in this one is West Willpower. West Willpower is just consistent. Last 5 times out, here's his speed figures: 102, 100, 103, 109, 106. Hello. I mean, come on. That's over a span from October of 2022 to May of 2023. This horse just isn't running bad races. And you get 3 wins in that stretch as well, or 2 wins. There was a win right before that as well. So 3 wins in his last 6 efforts. I think he's on the right type of track. And I think he's on a track where he can sit off of Stiletto Boy and Speed Bias and then go. I think he can press. I think Brad Cox has got this horse ready to roll for this particular race. I think this is a big one for him. I feel like this is the race that he's really been pointing to all year in a lot of ways. So I like West Willpower, especially at 7-2. If you're going to give me 7-2 on West Willpower, I love it. Does he get bet down to 5-2? I don't know. At 5-2, I might not like him quite as much, but I think at 7-2, this is a really, really nice horse that I like a lot in this race. I just think he gets the trip. That's the biggest thing that I think. He just gets the right trip. From a value standpoint, I'm going to use Stiletto Boy at 6-1 for Ed Mosier Jr. This horse is just gutsy. This horse is 5 for 5 in the money at this distance. And you look at those last 4 efforts in the San Antonio, in the Pegasus, in the Big Cap, obviously beating Proxy and defunded that day. In the Oaklawn mile or Oaklawn handicap against Proxy and Last Samurai, losing by a head basically in that race, almost a 3-way photo finish. Absolutely incredible effort there. Now you're coming back from a little bit of a layoff. Give this horse a little bit of a chance to run, to rest, and come back. He's going to be fresh. He's going to go out. The question is, does Kent DeSormo hold him back a little bit? Does he do what he does in the Big Cap, basically, where he let him sit a little bit? And that was not necessarily by design. It was a little bit forced. But, Stiletto Boy showed something that day. A, I never thought he could get 1.25 miles. And B, I never thought he could really win from off the pace, but he did both those things that day. So that was super impressive. And he came back and ran a 103 buyer in that Oaklawn handicap. I wonder if I think he's got a big race in him on Saturday. I think he can sit off of Speed Bias, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually faster than Speed Bias. You look at some of the comparable fractions that they run at like 1 1/16. It's interesting. You go back and you look at that Oaklawn race, 2 back for Speed Bias. The opening quarter and half was 24-1, 49-1. Okay. That was the opening quarter and half. The last time Stiletto Boy went 1 1/16, he was running 22-3, 46 flat. Get the hell out of here. Are you kidding me? Like, the speed is not even in the same ballpark. I mean, you look at his 1 1/16 just to make comparable fractions. He's running so much faster early on than Speed Bias is. So I think that's another interesting angle. I'm just a sucker for Stiletto Boy too, but I think at 6-1, you're actually getting a really good value on him as well. All right. Well, now that I've rambled, I was making good time, and then I got bogged down rambling about that race. But that was the biggest race in the card. So understandable. But let's finish things up with the Tepping here in this Tepping Stakes, going 1 mile on the turf for 3-year-old fillies. And I'm going to go to another Brad Cox horse, and this is Heavenly Sunday. And listen, it's not even the favorite in this race. Shigeru, the number 5 horse, is actually the favorite in this race at 2-1 from a morning line standpoint. And I wouldn't be surprised if that horse actually takes even more money. A lot of people really like Shigeru. I kind of need to see her win one against good company. I get last time out was super impressive coming off the bench since that Breeders' Cup juvenile turf, Phillies turf, and which was not a particularly good race, but she had some excuses that day. But you go back and look at her running lines, it's not as if she's just been racking up stakes wins in her career. She runs well. She's got some big efforts. She ran a really nice 4th on the dirt in the Alcibiades last year. But again, if I'm going to take a short price on a horse like I am with Shigeru, I kind of need to see her have a couple of stakes wins. And I just don't see that here. The speed figure last time out was very nice, 83. She has every right to take a step forward. Philip Bauer, I should say, is 5 for 5 as a trainer on hitting the board, 1 for 5 with getting wins. Julian's going to be aboard here. It's going to be interesting to see what Julian does with regards to the pace scenario in this race, because there is a little bit of pace here. But, and it's not so much that there's a lot of pace, but it's just an intriguing pace scenario in terms of how forward does he want to place Shigeru early on. The horse I'm going to use is Heavenly Sunday at 5-2 for Brad Cox with Florent Giroux aboard. This horse won the Edgewood last time out, wired the field, and beat 2 horses, Mission of Joy and Liguria, who both come back to win stakes races next time out. Mission of Joy comes back to win in grade 3. Liguria comes back to win a listed stakes race next time out. Listen, maybe Heavenly Sunday gets hammered, but this horse ran against really, really good competition. 2 back, ran against in that Appalachian against Papilio and Cairo Consort, finished a really game 3rd that day. This horse has never finished out of the money, 3 wins in 5 career efforts. The speed figures are ticking up. There could be another tick up on the day. I just think this horse has really great tactical speed and also has won from off the pace. So does not need the lead. You go back and look, this horse is both maiden and second efforts were coming from off the pace, were stalking. Then the last 2 times out, this horse goes to the lead. Listen, I think this horse makes a lot of sense. Even the third place effort, 3 back in the Swedish Chant was a huge effort against Cairo Consort and Alphabella that day. This horse just doesn't run a bad race. So 5-2, I'd much rather use this horse than Shigeru at a lower price. Now, from a value standpoint, I'm going to take a little bit of a swing with the number 4, Wonderful Lady, for Brendan Walsh, who I mentioned when the Walsh barn gets hot, get out of the way. 25% right now, 4 for 16 winning. More importantly, 10 for 16 in the money. Gets Tyler Gaffleone aboard, a name I've not mentioned a lot, but he's winning at a 28% clip at Ellis Park this meet. This horse, I think, has a right to take a step forward. Won a big-time $100,000 allowance optional claimer last time out of Churchill Downs. That was the second time back, and her second time in North America, second time back from a layoff. This is a horse that ran in a Group 3 company in France, prior to shipping over. Has handled soft ground before, has handled good to soft ground before. I think this horse is actually probably better on firm, but if there is a little bit of moisture, it's not the end of the world for this type of a horse. So I really like this horse quite a bit in this spot. I think should like some of if there is early pace and you're worried about Heavenly Sunday fading because you think maybe a horse like Sandra D presses a little too much. Maybe you think a horse, even like Safine, the number 2, presses a little too much. Shigeru presses a little too much. You think there might be a little too much pressure from Santa Fe Gold even on the outside. Then I think Wonderful Lady makes a lot of sense. A horse that's going to be making one big late run for Brendan Walsh. Third back, you get Tyler back aboard. I like this one as a value play at 8-1. All right. Well, that's going to close out Saturday at Ellis Park. Wishing all of you all of the best, obviously, at the card. And hope we hit some winners, both vertically, horizontally, the whole 9 yards. But I wish everybody the best of luck. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button here on YouTube. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.